morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to HR Uncut. This is your host, Gurpreet Korman and Tracy.
Yep, me.
Tracy, both of us are talent attraction and retention experts. Today, we're going to be talking about a really hot topic, which is actually really dear and near close to my heart because being a woman of color, growing up in Canada, born and raised in Canada, but being a person of color on top of that, being a woman of color, um, this topic about diversity is really, really close to my heart just because I've experienced it growing up and then in the workplace as well. And it's probably one of the reasons maybe I love HR so much because it's an opportunity to change that.
Mhm.
And so today we're going to talk about how diversity has become a buzzword in the last couple of years, especially in 2020, and how a lot of companies are starting to use it more of a marketing gimmick. I'm not saying every company out there is, but there are companies that are maybe not aware that they're using it as a marketing gimmick to present that they are a diversified workplace and they're committed to diversity. And when you actually take a look at, if you go on LinkedIn and look at who works there, I did this recently and I was really a little bit shocked and just put it on one company that did an amazing job from my research. I was doing some research for somebody, for a client, and then I came across this amazing organization that seemed really amazing on paper, saying all the right words, partner up with the right associations when you go on their website. And I was like, wow, blown away. I was like, this is good for you. I was like cheering this company on. And then I don't know what hit me. I'm like, let me look them up on LinkedIn. And then when I went through LinkedIn, I saw who's working there. I was shocked to see C-levels were lacked diversity. Okay, I'm talking about color here when I look through it. So majority of their employees and C-levels were Caucasian, white. Then I tripled down to the leadership management team, same thing. And then the HR team, majority of white. And I was like, okay, but your website, your career page says otherwise, and you've partnered with all these associations, but how come I can't see it when I'm going through your employees on LinkedIn? And I did extensive research on this company on LinkedIn, and I was just really disappointed, and hence that spiraled me to write a post that you're a hypocrite. And I found that a lot of companies are doing this, and it's not the real solution to fixing diversity. If you are committed to really want to be, DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of all go together. You can't do one and not do the other to truly be diversified. And it's sad to see how many companies are making these statements on their websites or their career sites, on their job postings, that they're committed to diversity. But then when you look at, if you look at their employees, well, you'll find out when you go through the interview process too, that if you're not seeing diversity by appearance, then where's the commitment? So today, this topic is, again, it's interesting. I don't know if we're live on LinkedIn because I didn't get a notification. Yes, we're live. Okay, great. So this is, again, as I said, really, really important topic, not just for me, for Tracy as well. Like, both of us work in the HR space. Yes, my experience is on a personal level as well, being a color person with ethnic background. I just want to highlight something. Diversity isn't just about race, gender, or ethnic background. A lot of companies tend to make it about that. It's one component, but it's not the complete component about this. And I did a talk on this last year at Amplified DEI Global Summit. And my talk, I was a speaker for the summit, and my talk was how diversity is beyond just race, gender, and ethnic background. And the reason behind that is yes, I'm not saying don't hire, ethnic background, race, and gender. That's we need to do that. We also need to go beyond just looking at it from a race perspective. And we need to really commit to really hiring diversify. But before you publicly start claiming and making statements because it sounds good to have it on your website, I encourage companies and I challenge companies to do DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Though we're talking about diversity today, you need to do it internally first before you make any statements on your website. Because if you can't do it internally, then the external piece, part of my language, just BS. Then it's a bunch of crap. It means nothing. It means nothing to the individual. You're not fooling a candidate when they come to work for you. You're not fooling your employees either when you're claiming these statements. So before you claim a statement, I encourage companies to internally fix the problem first. It does start inside. It doesn't start externally. You can't do DEI externally first without doing it internally. And I've talked about this many times last year and even in 2020. When me and Gil had our GAG live segment, we've talked about this. You need to do diversity from inside. So we're going to go deeper into this and we're going to kick off this segment with, I'm going to let Tracy talk now as, how can you as an organization really commit to diversity, starting from internal and then going external? Tracy?
Right. I think, and to your point, I think sometimes we put in our job postings and in our website sort of, and I don't want to say flavor of the month because this is not a flavor of the month, but we have the tendency as an organization, back in the day, I think it was, we're an equal opportunity employer was at the bottom of every job posting. And I think it was put there because, well, that's what we're supposed to do. And that's what, we're supposed to have that at the bottom without really understanding what it means. And I think that's what's sort of happened now with DEI is it's become expected to see, but not necessarily adopted within the organization. And I think ways of doing that is, making sure that we've created policies that are, diversity friendly. So we're looking at our policies through the lens of people who are in that diverse, and like you said, it doesn't have to be ethnicity. It doesn't have to be race. I mean, you're looking at, it could be sexual orientation. It could be age. It could be, political and those types of views that make us different. So do we have policies in place or recruiting practices in place that either you intentionally or unintentionally are blocking that group? Right? Learning disabilities, do we have testing in place? Are we open to the way that we're advertising? Are we targeting, certain job boards that are inclusive job boards? Doing that sort of stuff. I mean, even, looking at our benefit packages, are our benefit packages inclusive or are they, just sort of driven towards a norm? I think we should be, doing diversity training because sometimes what happens in organizations is we just say we're diverse, but we don't really have that acceptance within the organization because we haven't trained our folks on what diversity really means, what inclusion really looks like, making sure that our managers understand it so that it's less and less of a trigger word and is actually ingrained in our organization and how we're presenting ourselves, not just like you said, not just to the outside world when we're hiring or we're trying to promote our organization, but how we're actually, managing, running, and being inclusive within our own organization. And to your point too, I've always been of the, sort of understanding in the way that I've done my HR is my organization makeup really and truly needs to reflect the community that I'm working within. So if a community that I'm working within is very diverse, and yet I have, like you just said, maybe just Caucasian males at every level, that's not representative necessarily of the community that I'm working within. So you really have to look at that. And do I have barriers in place that, just automatically promote these people to our top positions that are adversely affecting other groups and maybe we're not meaning to do that. So that's why we have to really take our glasses off and look closely at some of our practices.
Yeah. Also taking it further, diversity is even, who are you hiring?
Yep.
Do you only hire university grads, for example? Research shows that there are 70%. Sorry, let me read this research. So new report conducted. So last year, McKinsey and a nonprofit Opportunity at Work conducted a report. As many as 30 million U.S. workers without college diplomas have the skills necessary to earn 70% more income than they are right now. Now, I would say even 70% more than 70% of individuals without college degrees have the potential to land jobs, are fully capable of doing those jobs, because we all know in today's day and age, university degrees or college degrees are not the only way to access and learn. We live in a world where we have access at our fingertips. Not everyone's privileged to go to university. Not everyone's privileged to go to college, depending on what country you live in. It's either university or college. In US they call it colleges. Here we call it university and / we have college, which is in US it's called a community college, right? But now, when we talk about diversity, that's why I'm saying it's beyond just race and gender and ethnic backgrounds. How many companies are rejecting candidates simply because they don't have a university degree? How many companies are rejecting candidates because they don't have the same industry experience? Like bankings, I'm going to say, are notorious for this, because if you don't have banking experience, you're not going to get a job. Like you can, but it'll be like a little bit of a challenge, because they're so adamant that you come from the banks, which never made sense to me. For example, like let's take me, for example, I have HR experience, but last time I checked, it doesn't matter what industry you're working in. Humans are humans. You're dealing with human beings. Does banking human career professionals act different than, let's say, manufacturing? Maybe. Tad bit, but you're still dealing with humans, right? And it never made sense to me, why would you not take on somebody that comes from a different industry? Because they're going to come in with, again, that's what we mean by diversify. They're going to have a different wealth of knowledge compared to everybody that you've been hiring banking, right? They're bringing a whole set of knowledge that you can benefit from them. It's a benefit to hire diverse backgrounds. So none of that stuff to me ever made sense. None of it made sense, even where companies like, well, you have to have a university degree. And I always challenge any hiring manager came to me, I'm like, well, why? If it's a medical science thing, sure. But why, other than professions that are governed by, governments and regulations, I get it. But any profession that's not regulated, why do we need to then sit there and say, you have to have this? Why? When we live in a world where you can learn in so many different ways today. So we're just limiting. I feel like we're limiting our candidate pool to just, I call it biases. You can't hire people just like you. That's not diversified.
No.
Your thoughts?
No, I agree.
I don't think that's diversity.
I agree. I think sometimes we devalue by giving extra value to those types of things, right? If we say you have to have a university degree, then we're devaluing, another way of doing education, right? Because I don't agree necessarily that education is the end all and be all, like you said, unless it has something to do with a governed or regulated type of position where you need that, right?
Yeah.
Same with industry experience. I think we cut ourselves off from, seeking new perspectives and ideas because we're so honed into our own industry. And then we're devaluing people's experience in other industries where they could add value to our organization. So I think we get stuck in this, and that happens a lot, with clients I work with, they have to have this, and this, and they have to be from our industry. Yeah. And why your industry? Like, what is so spectacular about your industry that it has to be so exclusive, right? And I think we have the tendency to do that. And in some ways, I think it's something that we fall back on. To make it what we think is a better candidate, and we're really missing out on the breadth and depth of knowledge that somebody else could bring.
Fear-based.
Yeah,
I call it fear-based. You have a fear And if you hire somebody outside of your industry, that they're not going to know X, Y, and Z, but hiring someone, you can train people on the industry. It's not rocket science. If someone's smart, where everybody is, like, you wouldn't be in your career profession if you weren't smart. I believe everyone's talented, but then you're limiting yourself to, okay, you have to have this X experience from the industry. Why? That can be taught. If someone really wants to work for your organization, they come from a different industry, they can learn on that stuff. How hard is to learn about companies' products and services in the industry? It's not that hard. What I want to share something is, I came across this post on LinkedIn the other day, which, here we go, which really is exactly what I started this whole conversation today about. So I came across this individual's post through my connection. So Monica wrote this post, and this is a picture of a CEO dinner conference. And if you look at it, this is the prime example of how companies lack diversity. So if you look at this picture, what you see is, well, what do you see, Tracy?
Well, I see Caucasian men. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm assuming.
Let me zoom in even more.
Isn't that awful? Yeah, I should wear my glasses. But yeah, I can see. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Okay. So this is her post.
Yeah.
So it's a photo of a CEO dinner that just took place 2020. So it's really recent. And here's the picture. And I came across, I think it was a couple of days ago, I saw this, and I'm like, yeah, like, this is the problem. Companies are saying they're diversified. When writing, that's why I call it a marketing gimmick, because so many people have jumped onto this bandwagon of diversity without really understanding the depth of it. And then when you look at these pictures, this is very recent. All you see right here, all of this, I don't see any. First of all I see is men. Let's start there. I see no females on this, and this is CEO's conference. I don't know how many people are attending this, but when you look at the round table of the CEOs, you see one, all male. Two, when you look at the color, you see majority of them are all white, Caucasian. So how in today's day and age is this diversity, right? So this is the issue. We keep talking on diversity, and hence why diversity became a buzzword. But how many organizations are really committed to diversity? Because this right here is not a commitment to diversity.
No.
At all.
No. And I think the other thing, sort of building a little bit on what we're talking about with education and experience, I mean, lots and lots of times, more times than I care to remember, companies will say, I only want Canadian experience. Right?
Yes.
And that, I think, is probably, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me when I hear that, because I don't understand why you have, for example, in a job where it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Like, why does Canadian work experience trump what somebody's done in another country, where the skills are relatively the same? Education might be a little bit different, but whatever. The skills are relatively the same. And we should be looking at, you know, can this person learn the job I want them to do? Is this person going to be a value add to my organization? But instead we say, okay, you don't have Canadian experience. We're not even going to look at your resume. We're not even going to entertain you, which to me is, like I said, I think we need to look at our hiring practices and really question, you know, what is it that we're looking for in a candidate? And that this candidate hits all of the ticks in the box, but that those ticks in the box are coming from another country. How can we then say, no, we're not going to hire them? I don't understand that, right?
Good point. I'm going to take a step further. How many companies have hired newcomers on a lower job and paid lower wages, lower salary? These are smart individuals coming into Canada. Yep. They didn't just come into Canada for the sake of coming in. They got PR because there's lack of skills in this country. And then these individuals, I feel bad for. I've worked with a lot of newcomers, and I've helped them transition and get the role that they deserve to be in the comparable market rate. But the sad thing is, even just yesterday I was talking to somebody, keep getting no Canadian experience.
Mhm.
and they had wealth of experience from a different country. But what companies failing to recognize is their wealth of experience is a benefit for you, for you. Yes, no kidding, Sherlock. They don't have Canadian experience. They're new to the country. How are they supposed to have Canadian experience? But the thing is, let's look beyond the Canadian experience. Look at the experience they're bringing. They're
Yes.
bringing different set skills that you will benefit,
Mhm.
that you need, and you're going to benefit. Because let's face it, I say this all the time when I'm coaching. Canada is not the most developed country. It's not the most progressive technology-based country either. I have worked with so many newcomers to learn that, oh my God, what they've done in their country is so more progressive than us.
Mm.
Well, let's just take the pandemic, for example. I think pandemic was a wake-up call for Canada.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
one, we were dependent on so many other countries and we
Yeah.
couldn't make anything in our own country, and so on, right?
Yep.
So we come in and again, these are biases. I don't think you should have a checklist. If you are using checklists to make your company diversify, or diversity, or equity, and inclusive, I think you're already doing it wrong, because this shouldn't be a checklist. This is not a checklist, data driven thing. If you really want to make your organization diversify and you're committed to it, then you really need to sit there and think deep here and look at every possible avenue outside of your checklist. There's not a magic solution or checklist you need to follow. I can't say this enough. It's common sense in many aspects of diversity, as well as human nature. Diversity is about, again, do you have, look at, if any company out there really wants to be diversified, you need to start and do an internal audit. Look at who you hire, who's working for your organization, what are their backgrounds, what are their ethnic backgrounds, age, what's the age level, right? If you really want to commit to diversity, you need to do an internal audit to really get a clear picture of what's happening and how your practices are, how you've been hiring. And then you can go develop a plan. Well, how do we then make ourselves diversify? Why are we limiting ourselves to X amount of people or X type of people? If you're hiring the same type of personality types, you are not committed to diversity either, right? Again, diversity is more than just, it is race, gender, ethnic background, disability,
Mhm.
capabilities, credentials, skills, how you hire, industry base. Are you hiring for one of my good connections, Jen, had this talk on one of my LinkedIn a couple years ago about how you should be hiring for culture add, not
Mhm.
culture fit. So are you like, that's all diversity, right? Like
Mhm.
we can't sit there and say we want commitment to diversity, but then we are just not even looking outside of the box to say, okay, well, how can we really diversify? Diversify also meaning hiring people that are different from you. Diversify also means hiring people that think different from you, hiring people who come from different backgrounds, different industries. That's all diversity.
Mhm.
But in the end of the day, I'm going to also say, as a person of color, if I look at your organization and I can't see any representation of color, I'm going to be more intimidated to apply to your organization, because I'm going to be, one, singled out. You may hire me because, oh, well, I check off the box of diversity. She's a woman of color. Let's hire her. But then you hire me. How are you going to integrate me? Are you going to integrate me into an inclusive workplace? Like,
Yeah.
even speaking on inclusive, now you may be diversified, but how many companies actually take the time, even for an event, to really make it inclusive? Because I remember my first job, I had to plan a company barbecue, and there were people in the organization, because of different ethnic and religion backgrounds, that couldn't eat meat,
Mhm.
or Muslims eat halal meat, and the company never actually looked at that and say, okay, we're doing a company event, but then how do we make sure that these individuals have enough choices to eat other than just
Yep.
grass?
No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
And
Because I mean,
I
yeah.
said, no, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, well, we need to have a halal meat. We need to have veggie choices. We need to have this and this and this and this. So I made sure that to my best ability at the time as a newbie in HR, And employees from those ethnic backgrounds that ate halal and vegetarians, they all came to me after the barbecue was done and said, thank you. I'm like, I'm sorry, what are you thanking me for? They're like, this is the first time the company's actually had so much more choices for, let's say, vegetarians and there was halal meat. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, thank you. I know, pretty much giving me credit. I go, how do you know it's meat? They're like, well, before you, nobody did it. So it's rocket science to know that the company's been around for 150 years. And some employees were there for 20 plus years to be like, okay, all these years we've had same way barbecue, and this time this year. And that really, stuck to me, because that's was my first example of experience of really making inclusive workplaces. But how many times we don't even acknowledge the people that are working for us. Also, diversity I said diversity goes hand in hand with inclusive and equity, right? So equity pay, like now you brought up newcomers. How many companies have hired newcomers and are not paying them the market rate, right? Now we have an equity issue. How many companies have hired females and for the same roles but not paying them the same price that you're paying a male to do the job, right? Equity issue. Now now let's go on the inclusive side. How are you making your workplace inclusive to every single person? This is not about making inclusive as a general, but making a workplace exclusive means you are catering towards each employee in your organization, because each employee's needs and wants and their ethnic backgrounds are different.
Yes. Well, and I think that's one of the things that we do. And I don't know that it's always done intentionally, but I've worked with companies who have the best intention, but the execution is just horrible, because we make assumptions about how people want to be treated, or make assumptions about how somebody is before we've even asked them. Right. And I think one of the things, and I know this is going to seem extremely rudimentary when I say it, but one of the biggest things that I remember when this started to happen, and that's how long I've been around, but in the workplace, where we went from saying Merry Christmas to Happy Holidays. And so many people would get so bent out of shape because they didn't understand why we were making this change. And I think it was something that we did sort of as a society to Happy Holidays. Well, we're doing it, right? We did it to be inclusive, because there's a lot of things that are happening around that.
Opinion on that.
But there's a lot of so we're doing it to be inclusive, not to be exclusionary. So I think because you start to alienate people when you don't recognize and understand and try to bring everybody together, right? So it's something very simple like that. I mean, it was a very divisive thing at the time, and I think it still has some heated conversation around it. But when you look at the intent behind why that was started, same as these, barbecues and events at work. If you're only serving, sort of one meat because that's what we serve, because that's what we're used to doing, and you start to exclude other people, then everything that you're doing, you might have brought somebody in that's a different background, but now you've alienated them and excluded them because you're not understanding them, right?
So happy holidays. As I said, I have a different opinion on that. I don't think that saying happy holidays makes it inclusive. I think far from it. My opinion is different on this. I think you're not being exclusive by saying happy holidays. If you really wanted to be inclusive, then during December, let's take December, you would not just say happy holidays. I think there's nothing wrong. I'm Sikh, and around December, we don't have a happy holiday around for Sikhs, but we do have certain holidays around, or certain history events that took place. But there's not a celebration like a happy occasion. There's more of a whole little bit a different approach. A different event happening. But the thing is, December is a month where, yes, a lot of different ethnic backgrounds have holidays. So instead of saying happy holidays, why can't we say happy Hanukkah, the day of a Hanukkah, right? Happy this, happy that. I say Merry Christmas, because I say happy holidays as, okay, it's happy holidays. But if a company really wanted to be inclusive and all around the holidays, then recognize every holiday in that month that your employees are celebrating. That's what will make it inclusive than just saying happy holidays. Happy holidays is a generalized term, but if you really want to be inclusive, then you will know what holiday your employees are celebrating, and then you will recognize that holiday, and you will advertise happy this. Happy Hanukkah, happy, I don't know what
Nope, that's fair.
Happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's inclusive to say happy holidays. I think it's inclusive if you actually say happy Hanukkah, happy Merry Christmas. I say Merry Christmas, and I've had people look at me. I'm like, well, I'm born and raised here. I'm born and raised here. It's not even about me being born and raised in Toronto, but it's more of, well, it's Christmas. Why can't I say Merry Christmas? There's nothing wrong with that, and that's why I said it's not being inclusive. But I would go to someone who celebrates Hanukkah and say happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, if that's something that they're comfortable doing, right? I mean, I've worked in organizations where some folks didn't want that. They felt that they were being singled out because if we were celebrating specific holidays, they didn't want that. So that's why I mean, like, if you need to understand what your employees want and how they want to be treated. So in some organizations, absolutely, that's going to work if that's what the employee base is comfortable with. If it's not comfortable with that, then you have to adapt. I think that was more of my point. So I think educating ourselves and not just making grand assumptions that, if I'm Jewish or whatever, I want to be, treated in a certain way. I think we have to understand our folks. And I think by having that training, diversity training, removing biases so that we're really and truly understanding. And I don't really understand how come we just can't be authentic and just treat people like people. Yeah. But in any event, we've come to that, right? So I think it's got to be something that's ingrained in the organization, and the decisions that we're making, the policies that we're putting in place, how we're hiring, where we're hiring, if we're making a conscious effort to be inclusive, or if we're just, unfortunately, just only hiring in one lane,
Yeah. You brought up something really important where you said you need to ask your employees. All it comes down to at the end of the day is a lot of companies do make assumptions, start doing things and start implementing things without actually talking to the employees, and hence where the exclusive. To really be inclusive, you have to talk to your employees. Something as small as, I remember one company we used to celebrate birthdays.
Yes.
I used to ask every employee, because we used to do a monthly birthday thing, right?
Yep.
So and I implemented this birthday thing in other various companies as well. But I always asked every employee, I would send an email to the whole employees in my location and say, okay, we're going to be going forward. We're going to be doing, let's say, a month. I did anniversaries and birthdays together. We used to get a big cake, and we did a lunch celebration. At the end of lunch, we cut a cake and everybody got cake, right? Mm-hmm. But I sent an email saying, we're going to do this. If you don't consent to your name being recognized for anniversary and birthday, please email me back and let me know so that we don't include you into the name, right? Like, you have to have consent. And sure, if there was one or two people, everybody was okay with it, but there are a few people that don't want. And I learned that in my first job, because we did this in my first job. That company always advertised. They used to print a whole list and put on a bulletin board, like, of birthdays. And we used to give anniversary letters. Those were personalized, so that it went on to individuals separately. That's when I was like, oh, there are people, because again, if that company didn't do that, I wouldn't know there were people that didn't want to celebrate birthday, because I'm such a big on birthday. Like, right. I make a big deal about my birthday. I make a big deal about everyone in my life, their birthday. Like, have always been big on birthdays. But that was a wake-up call for me. Oh, wow. Some people don't. They're very private. They don't want anybody at work to know that it's their birthday. They don't want anyone to wish them happy birthday. And hence, that's where the inclusive came in. Like, inclusive doesn't mean you include everybody. There might be people who don't want to be included.
Yep. Oh, and I've had lots of times too where your best intention of having a get together or an event or a party, and it doesn't resonate with everybody because some people's personality is such that they don't want to do those kinds of things. And then what you find out is that then you start to create these cliques because, so and so doesn't want to do this. And so I think being inclusive, like I said, is really and truly understanding your workplace, your people, what works for them. And if having a barbecue doesn't work for them, then don't do it. I think it's just one of those things where we really have to listen to our employees. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox, but that's
okay. We're gonna end it right here. We're gone a little bit 5 minutes over, but to sum it up, diversity shouldn't be used as a marketing gimmick. It's not something you can get brownie points just because you advertise you are diversified. If you truly want to be a diversified company, you're really committed to DEI as a whole, because I do believe that each component goes hand in hand as diversity, equity, and inclusive. You have to be committed internally first before you start doing any marketing campaigns around it.
Yep.
Make sure you do an audit, internal audit first. Look at what's happening inside your organization, and then look at how you can internally change and be committed internally first to DEI before we make those big grand gestures on social media or on our websites. Because you got to walk the talk. That's the best way I can explain, is that walk the talk. Don't say something, but then you're not walking the talk.
Yep.
So you can only commit to DEI if you are going to walk the talk and have the internal piece done first. I think it starts, as for my HR 15 years experience, DEI starts inside. It's an internal thing before you can go external. Tracy, your ending remarks?
No, I absolutely agree. I think that if you're going to advertise something, then you have to be authentic about it. So if you are advertising that you have DEI, that you're an inclusive workplace, then you best be sure that everything that you're doing internally supports that.
Sounds good. So we're going to wrap our session of HR Uncut right here. We'll be back next Wednesday with another great topic. Until then, keep safe, have fun. Bye, guys.
See ya.